Hello dear, welcome to the first edition of the week on newspaper headlines, coming to you live from the Advent Cable Network Nigeria Television ACNN TV here in the capital city of Abuja. The dailies are covered with stories within and around the globe on politics, security and the state of the nation. I am Rachel Ibuni. Let's get started with this day newspaper, and I'll take it from the lead story. Security forces step up surveillance in Federal Capital Territory. Orders over terrorist threats. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 2. And we have this picture: new king ascends throne. From left to right, the national leader or Progressive Congress, the Oni of Ife and the Oniru of Iruland, during the coronation of Oniru in Lagos yesterday. It happened yesterday. Then below the picture, Benin Monarch's peace deal threatened as APC, PDP renew accusations of violence. Story can be found on page 5. Now below the masthead, presidency. Economic challenges compelled Buhari to remove petrol subsidy. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 3. Above the masthead, CBN moves against banks, gaming companies over unauthorized forex transfers. The kickers places over 38 firms on PND to penalize management of banks. Increases target credit facility to 100 billion naira. The story starts from the front page, continues on page 3. And last story on this day newspaper, Fidelity Bank's half-year gross earnings hit 106 billion naira. See the details on page 8. We move on to Nigerian Tribune newspaper, and I'll take it from the top. Maize scarcity. Local silo concessionaire seeks quota for importation. The kickers. 5,000 metric tons not enough for poultry farmers. This is coming from PAN. Over 5% of silos empty. This one is coming from grain storage experts. Federal government's Ibadan silo leased to private firms. The story can be found on page 29. On page 23, Constitution review unstoppable. Senate replies Northern elders. How we spent 30.5 billion naira in 4 months to fight COVID-19. This is coming from the federal government, and the details on page 3. Below the masthead, bandits attack 5 Kaduna local government areas, kidnap, kill residents. That story is on page 30. And on page 26, Affair wants federal government to use 186 billion naira earmarked for school feeding to fund public varsities. AIB set to acquire drones for investigation of crashes. Details on page 3. Now to the lead story. Why fuel subsidy had to go. Presidency. The kicker. Fuel price hike illegal. Nigeria on autopilot, says Falano. See the details on page 2. Beside the picture, COVID-19 scam. Police arrest 2 for defrauding German 14.7 million euros. The details on page 29. On page 24, the Shomale-led NWC sacked to end internal crisis, APC tells court. Toxic waste allegedly kills tree in Ondo Forest Reserve. That story is on page 30. And the picture is that of Minister of Humanitarian Affairs Disaster Management and Social Development, and members of the National Humanitarian Coordination Committee during their visit to Borno State to discuss the immediate humanitarian needs of the state. This happened on Saturday. Now the bottom strip stories. Customs memo on Boko Haram in Federal Capital Territory. Police Defense headquarters say no cause for alarm. The kicker. We've begun investigation on authenticity of reports. This is coming from the customs, and details on page 2. Now last story. Southern Kaduna crisis. Mieti Allah bans minors from grazing cattle. Resolves to make peace with neighbors. See the details on page 29. We move on to New Telegraph newspaper. I'll take it from the top. Presidency justifies full price. Electricity tariffs hike. Says tough decisions necessary for economic growth. Govern with human face. PDP tells Buhari. Govern with human face. PDP tells Buhari. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 5. Now 600 million naira debt. Amcon takes over Hydro Hotels assets. That story is on page 8. Below the masthead, federal government moves for infrastructure development with end to subsidy. Still on page 8. Now, first half 2020, Fidelity Bank's gross earnings hit 105.8 billion naira. See the details on page 3. And on page 30, Bello, politics is over. It's time for governance. Will prevent planned terrorist attack on Federal Capital Territory. This is coming from the Defense Headquarters, and the details on page 4. Now to the lead story. 12 banks post 438 billion naira profit in 6 months. The kickers, despite COVID-19, lenders' results surpassed 2019's. Access, Zenith, GTB, UBA, FBN's PAT reflect resilience. Reward, lower savings rate will boost banks' first quarter earnings. See the details on page 3. And we have these gasoline prices in naira liter in some West African countries as at 31st August 2020. Now, price in Nigeria is as at 6th September 2020. That is 162 naira to a liter. We have other countries and how it goes. Below the chart, federal government spends 30.5 billion naira on COVID-19 in 4 months. Interpol arrests 2 Nigerians for 14.7 million euros PPE scam. See the details on pages 4 and 29. Now, the last story here. Honey may be used to treat breast cancer. That is a research, and the story is on page 8. Now we move to the Blueprint newspaper. I'll take it below the masthead. Organized labor insists on Port Harcourt protest. The kicker, Wike must not harm any worker. September 8. This is coming from WABA. Beware of subsisting court order. That is coming from the Rivers government. And the story starts from the front page. It continues on page 6. Forest infractions. CBN blocks Premier Lotto's account. 37 orders. See details on page 26. Troops kill 100 bandits. Arrest 148 in Northwest. That story is on page 5. Now to the lead story. Senate. Nigeria can't sustain 5 billion naira monthly spending on IDPs. Now to the kickers. Says country broke. Subsidizing fuel impossible. Urges endurance on electricity tariff hike. Subsidy removal from sectors long overdue. This is coming from the presidency. 30 billion naira spent on COVID-19 in 4 months. This is coming from the Accountant General of the Federation, Idris. And the details can be found on page 6. Now below the picture, Nigeria's trade deficit plunges to 6.2 trillion naira. Exports sink by 51.7%. Our story is on page 26. Now to the bottom strip stories. Boko Haram infiltration. DHQ, that is the Defense Headquarters, assures Federal Capital Territory residents of safety. See details on page 5. Now page 13. Buhari off to Niger to address ECOWAS leaders on COVID-19 and others. Amidst Steve Jukun clashes, Taraba governor marries out daughter to thief. Amidst Steve Jukun crisis, Taraba governor marries out daughter to thief. That story is on page 8. And finally, on the Blueprint newspaper, FIRS launches online portal for financial institutions. See the details on page 26. All right, we'll pause here to observe a short break. Newspaper headline continues with more. Please stay tuned.
I wouldn't want to say we're in a state of anarchy, as it is, because no one is sure of his life walking on the streets anywhere today in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in the words of national security, I think we are in a state of emergency.
Nobody will say that what is happening in the country is that anybody that says that is very, very economical with the truth.
Once a law is made in any nation, nobody is above the law. If a church has a business entity, the church should pay their own taxation on whatever business they have that they are making money.
Election is not war. Soldiers must not be mobilized for election. Election is a civil affair, and I'm saying that to the federal government. Police has a primary responsibility in protecting the balloting process.
Thanks for staying tuned. We continue with stories from the Nigerian Pilot newspaper. Now take it below the masthead. Defense Headquarters dismisses security warning by Nigeria Custom. See details on page 5. And Edo decides. Governor Obaseki gives reasons why Shomole is after him. See the details on page 9. And now to the lead story. Mind blogging. Federal government says it spent 30.5 billion naira to combat COVID-19 in 4 months. Amount represents 84% of 36.3 billion naira coronavirus donations. We are not satisfied with federal government's response to our FOI request. This is coming from Sarah. Insist it didn't contain breakdown of beneficiaries. See details on page 8. Now to the picture. Is that of a cross-section of exit students during the inauguration of extramural lesson on National Examination Council, NECU, and National Business and Technical Examination Board, NAPTEB, and the National Board for Arabic and Islamic Studies, organized by the Muslim Council Adamawa State chapter in Yola, Adamawa State. This happened yesterday. Now below the picture, Benue leaders blame Nigerians for voting Buhari as president. The story is on page 5. The bottom strip stories. ASU insists on payment of arrears to suspend strike. See details on page 6. On page 10, resident doctors begins nationwide strike today. Governor Jerry says PDP fielding best candidates for Bayelsa by-election. Our story is on page 6. On page 5, Presidency explains why subsidy was removed. And on page 13, Akwa Ibom Hospital make breakthrough in brain and heart surgeries. That story is on page 13. And finally, Nigerian Pilot newspaper on page 8. CBN freezes accounts of 38 firms over forex abuses. All right, we'll move to People's Daily newspaper. I'll take it from the top below the masthead. COVID-19 scam. 2 nabbed for defrauding German company of 14.7 million euros. See details on page 6. Income tax. FIRS launches online portal for financial institution. Now to the lead story. Boko Haram threat on Federal Capital Territory. We are on red alert. Defense headquarters assures Nigeria. We are on red alert. Defense headquarters assures Nigerians. See the details on page 5. Now to the picture from left to right. The national leader of the APC, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu of Ondo State, Governor Boyega Oyetola of Osun, and other party stalwarts during the commissioning of the new ultra-modern Ondo State Inland Revenue Service headquarters ahead of the inauguration of Governor Akeredolu's re-election campaign on Saturday. This happened in Akure. Now, the bottom strip stories. Africa's confirmed COVID-19 cases near 1.3 million. Africa's confirmed COVID-19 cases near 1.3 million. See details on page 3. And on page 7, airstrike kills several bandits in Kaduna Forest. Southern Kaduna Peace Summit holds Tuesday in Kafanchan. See details on page 8. And lastly, on People's Daily newspaper, new full prize. Governor Badru begs Buhari to do something. That is on page 2. We move to the Daily Trust newspaper and I'll take it below the masthead. Terror alert. Fear grips Federal Capital Territory residents. Defense headquarters urges vigilance. History will be kind to Buhari over subsidy removal. CBN raises target credit to 100 billion naira for MSMEs. The lead story, COVID-19. Millions of children at risk of measles, polio, due to vaccination disruptions. Why we shun immunization centers? This is coming from mothers. Lockdown keeps PHCs inaccessible. Healthcare agency. Immunization key to protecting children. This is coming from experts. And the story starts from the front page. It continues on page 5. We have these pictures of photos of children being immunized for measles in Maiduguri, while on the right is a child suffering from the disease and children queuing to be immunized. Federal government spends 5 billion naira monthly on IDPs. Senate panel. Now the bottom strip stories. 2 feared dead as IPOP attacks Hausa residents in Rivers. See the details on page 10. On page 18, Ethiopian Airlines resume Abuja-Lagos flights. Lastly, Nigerians flay Naira rain at Buhari's daughter's wedding. Nigerians flay nearest rain at Buhari's daughter's wedding. See details on page 30. Now to Business Day newspaper. On the lead story, no pain, no gain. Why ending subsidies is right way for Nigeria. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 31. Lafarge, Transcorp, Seblat, others emerge winners at Business Day Top CEOs and Nest Bulls Awards. The story starts from the front page. It continues on page 31. An inside story. Issuers see rise in claims as businesses face high credit defaults in COVID-19. See the details on page 2. And lastly, on Business Day newspaper, Fidelity Bank first half profits up 22% as gross earnings hit 105.8 billion naira. The details on page 6. All right, this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Newspaper Headlines. Thank you for giving us audience. Let's do this again on Wednesday. But before I go, I leave you with this word from Hebrews 12:2, which says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So, let the joy of the Lord be ours today and always. Watch the live broadcast of the official opening ceremony of the Synod of the Anglican Diocese of Lagos by 11 a.m. Please stay tuned and remain blessed. Bye for now.
Every embargo of the enemy shall get out of your system, your business, your family, in the mighty name of Jesus.
Amen.
In every area of your life, God will grant unto you breakthrough.
So I don't know what your own situation is today. Is it economic? The Lord can heal it.
Amen.
This hour, every problem, every siege, whatever battle, sicknesses and diseases, we pack